Hey, what's up? I'm Matt. This is the 10-Minute Bible Hour podcast, and we're in Matthew chapter 10, looking at Jesus' second big speech of the book of Matthew. There are 5 speeches that Matthew structures his whole book around, and in this one, Jesus is fixing to send out his 12 disciples, the uber famous ones that they're all the sculptures of and everything, out into the great big wide world to go and tell people about the kingdom. Specifically, they're supposed to say, the kingdom of heaven is near. It's almost like it's a code that you hear in spy movies where it's like, and the kingdom is often rainy this time of year or something. Like people were supposed to recognize it and register what was going on because they should be able to read the writing on the wall, see the signs. So Jesus is sending out his bannermen, expecting that these representatives of the kingdom will be recognized as associated with him, the king. But he's also a realist, and so he sends them out with this warning that I think is the pivotal verse of the whole speech in verse 16 of Matthew 10, where he says to his disciples before they go out, I'm sending you out like sheep among wolves, therefore be as shrewd as snakes and as innocent as doves. What was the original audience supposed to do with this instruction? What is the modern reader, like you or me, supposed to do with this instruction? Simply put, what does it look like to be shrewd and innocent at once? And look, this is where we just kind of burst the balloon. The reality is that we, you and I and the other people who are listening, we have kind of a weird little cabal going here. You got me. I was a Christian for a long time growing up, and then I went to seminary, and somewhere after that, I wasn't. The faith thing broke for me, and I wanted to be a Christian, but there were things about the Bible, things about God, things about the church and how it plays out that I couldn't square. So I was away from this thing for a time, even though I was still reading it and paying attention. Ultimately, I came to a place where I'm like, oh yeah, okay, the Bible checks out. God is the main character. There's some things that really make this work and come into focus. All right, yeah, I'm in because I want to be in because it makes sense to me. There are people who are listening right now who are like, yeah, I might have a story like yours, Matt. There are others of you listening right now who would say, yeah, I don't know. I just haven't really done the doubter's struggle thing. This has always made sense to me. And what took you years and years to figure out has been really evident to me since I was a kid. So yeah, no big deal. Okay, I'm a lifelong Christian. There are others of you listening who did the Christian thing for a while, and then you got burned or stuff quit making sense, or you just, I don't know, politics, who knows what happened. But you got to a place where you're like, yeah, who wouldn't hope that's true? But I just can't in good conscience say I'm in right now. But, you know, I care. It's interesting. I want to keep thinking about it. And so that's where you are. I know there are others of you who are like, no, I'm just decidedly out. I don't know. It's never made sense to me. The idea of a God or anything that is beyond the laws and boundaries of the natural world, that smacks of fantasy to me. But I know that this document is important. Maybe you think there's some really valuable moral stuff in here. Maybe you just have people you love who are really into this. And so you want to think outside yourself and show care to them by trying to understand where they're coming from. Whatever the case, it's big of you to be here and participate. The point is, we're pretty diverse. We're different people. We're coming from different places. That's cool. But what that means is that some of us in this conversation are in a place where we look at what Jesus is saying, and it's pretty evident that he wants people who believe in him to tell other people about that. Which means that part of the objective of the Christian, for better or for worse, with better execution and sometimes worse execution, is to go and show interest and care to other people unconditionally, and as part of that, talk about the whole kingdom thing and try to point to the kingdom values and the beauty of the kingdom and the compellingness of the king. The whole religion really doesn't work if you believe that there's a God and that this God delivers us from our brokenness and ruin and blindness and deafness and all the things that are wrong with us as individuals and humanity, and you believe all of that stuff, but then you don't really want that to be given away to anybody else. If you believe that there really is at least some small modicum of truly legitimately right and wrong in the cosmos, and you believe that all of us are to some degree, at least at some time, guilty of the wrong stuff, and then you receive what you understand to be forgiveness from God, and then you don't want to give that away to other people. That's weird. So the point is, my friends who are not in, my friends who are hanging out with us here, who would say, no, I don't believe this, but it's interesting. I just have to level with you. We want you to be a Christian. And at least for me, it doesn't have to look just like my thing. I don't know. I'm always thinking about it and trying to game it out. You know, I'm probably not the best example because sometimes I'm unsure of exactly where I land on this thing or that thing. It doesn't have to produce the same voting or social stuff or find the same stuff funny that I find funny. But I totally want you to be a Christian. I think the kingdom is real and it's beautiful and true and it's life-giving and fulfilling. And I'm not saying that what you're doing right now isn't. I just think this thing is amazing. And I think it's kind of the explanation, the cipher for human existence. And well, why would I want to sit on that? So yeah, I want you to become a Christian. And theoretically, if any Christian is reading the teachings of Jesus, we can't help but want to follow his example and lay that out for other people and try and, I don't know, by who we are and how we treat people. Maybe every now and then we hope to get something right and have it be like, oh yeah, that's pretty cool. That's an appealing thing about what your Jesus taught. And maybe other people become interested in that, or maybe not. Either way, regardless of where people land, yeah, you just got to care about people because people are valuable, even if they don't end up thinking your thing or worshiping your way. I know that's a lot of stuff, and it might feel like it's just a disclaimer, but it's really not, because the question of shrewd and innocent in understanding this text right means that we have to acknowledge that in this audience, we have a group of people who would like to put Jesus in front of others and convince them to follow him, and a group of people who are like, yeah, I don't want to do that right now. So please take it as a compliment that we think Jesus is real and important and life-giving, and we want to put you in the same room with him. But to you, my friends who are not Christians, what that means is that there are two ways we can come at you with this. One is this Kool-Aid man through the front door power play that involves salesmanship and maybe a little bit of manipulation and kind of cooking the books of the data to make it look a little sweeter than it is, or maybe downplaying some of the stuff about Jesus and Christianity that involves, like, you know, you've been here with me, bending the knee to a king and sort of handing over your life to a deity that is a bigger deal, assuming a right posture for God. So, maybe there's a temptation for us to be like, well, I don't think people who aren't Christians would like that language very much. Let's not talk about that. Let's just say some of the nice things Jesus said and see if we can get people in the door, and then later we'll tell them about it. Obviously, I don't like that strategy. I don't think it's right. I think another strategy is the one where you're like, well, I don't know, people are valuable and most people are fairly smart and of goodwill. And most people you can have a conversation with, and you just tell them exactly where you're coming from. And then maybe they tell you exactly where they're coming from. And then you just hash it out over time, and everybody ends up where everybody ends up. And that's cool. I suppose there are a lot of different in-between ways that people could do things, but the shrewdness thing could be intimidating. If I'm outside looking in at this, I could look at that and be like, I don't want people to be shrewd about me. So in light of that flow of thought and everything else that Jesus is saying here in this document, I don't think shrewd can be understood to mean manipulative. Jesus turns over all his cards. Remember back in chapter 8? Yeah, it had to have been chapter 8, right? Yeah, where he's doing all the miracles and people are like, I want to follow you. And Jesus is like, well, look out, I'm homeless. That's turning over his cards. There's no manipulation there. I mean, the guy practically begged him to manipulate him into following Jesus, and Jesus didn't do it. And for that matter, how about the passage we're in, Matthew chapter 10? I mean, hey, you're probably going to get beaten and stuff. Some real bad things are probably going to happen. There'll probably be some floggings. What? Like, do you want people to sign up for this thing? Jesus discloses. And so shrewdness can't mean withhold that from others. Otherwise, it isn't following the example of Jesus. It can't mean manipulate people and work them over to get them to the ends that you want. Shrewd must mean just read the field well. Know your audience. Know who you're talking to. If you're talking to somebody in their 80s who went and fought in a foreign war and has carried that burden with them their whole life, and their questions about God and very real suffering that they witnessed, maybe even helped inflict, about which they feel guilt, talking to them like they're a 15-year-old atheist who just figured out that atheism might be a thing on Reddit is dumb. It's not shrewd. It's not respectful, for that matter. You're just not dealing in the world of the person. You're just saying a wall of words at people from your own perspective. So shrewdness in this respect, and in the example of Jesus, is even considerate. It's just being thoughtful about who you're talking with and what their needs are and what their questions would be. Additionally, it involves identifying quickly the maneuverings of others. Now, in this case, it's religious people who usually do the maneuvering in the book of Matthew, but you've got some really clever, crafty traps that get set for Jesus. They're not of goodwill. They're not in good faith. What did we look at? Luke 20 the other day, where Jesus gets hit with those 3 questions, all of which seem very pious, but none of them are pious at all. They're all meant to trip him up and be like, there, see, we slung a bunch of crap at the wall and some of it stuck. So now that everything's obfuscated and murky, I guess the only thing we should go with is what's already established. And that's us, the religious leadership. So let's do that. But Jesus is the opposite of that. He's bringing clarity and light to these questions while others are trying to murkify it to defend the status quo that benefits them. So shrewdness is something that at first glance, as we look at this, we might think that means that Christians should go out and be scheming and sly and duplicitous and take the dirty things that the dirty other people do and flip it around and use it against them. How you like a dose of your own medicine. But that's not the example of Jesus. Here, shrewdness means you invest tremendous creative energy in observing the world around you, the circumstances around you, the people around you, and to figure out how to talk about and represent the king and the kingdom in a way that is winsome and decent and good and in a language people would understand and in a way that shows unconditional care one way or another. And if that is indeed what shrewdness means based on the example of Jesus and what we see in the rest of the document, then I like shrewdness. I am pro-shrewd. I don't know why, but that phrase just sounded super offensive, but I can't even think of why. I'm just going to wrap it up there. Ultimately, if Jesus wanted to give you a list of rules for how to be shrewd and how to be innocent, he could have just written a gigantic document and that would all be in there, and then you just do the things point by point. But what he's doing here instead is he's commissioning his disciples to go out and make decisions, to have ownership, to be vested. And that means that they're going to have to make principled decisions in the moment. And that means that they have to understand the principles and the values of the kingdom to do that, which is way more interesting than just doing the list of behavioral commands you were given. And so I like that even this instruction is a gesture of trust. I also like that it's an instruction that sets people up for success in their relationships with people who don't see it the same way on the question of the kingdom. Thank you so much for kicking this around with me. On to verse 17 next time around. I'm Matt. This is the 10-Minute Bible Hour podcast. Let's do this again soon.